Gowdy of South Carolina. He is the Republican chair of the Oversight Committee. He also sits on the House Intelligence and Judiciary Committees. Congressman, thanks for your time this afternoon, sir. I want to get to that letter that you wrote to the DOJ about the Russia investigation in just a moment. But let's start with the news of the day. Let's start with where Kelly O just left off there on steel tariffs. Every state exposed to their effects, even our beloved South Carolina. Some federal data there showing more than 3,000 workers in South Carolina produce steel. They produce aluminum. Overall, more than 128,000, though, are employed in industries that use steel and aluminum. Are across-the-board steel tariffs, are they good for our state's economy?
Probably not, Craig, but you know, it's a really complicated issue. Reasonable minds can differ. There are lots of casualties in the trade war. Some are intended casualties and some are not. You mentioned our beloved South Carolina. We export airplanes and automobiles and agricultural products, and if we place tariffs on incoming goods, it's not going to be that long before other countries place tariffs on our outgoing goods. So we're an exporting state. My district is an exporting district, and you know, I can remember far back enough when Republicans were free traders. Now, President Trump ran on a more populist platform. But remember, just a couple of years ago, the Republican cause du jour was ending the Ex-Im Bank. That's not what I'm hearing from this White House. I'm hearing fairness over free trade. In South Carolina, we're exporters, so we should be very mindful of any tariffs.
Do you think that the president's getting the best advice on trade?
I have a lot of confidence in Mick Mulvaney, who is one of his advisors. I don't know Gary Cohn, although I appreciate his service. You know, Mick was leading the charge to end Ex-Im. Mick is a free trader. That used to be the position of the Republican Party. I don't pretend to know his circle of advisors. It is a complicated issue. If I were watching my constituents lose their jobs due to unfair competition, I'd have a different position too. It just happens my district exports goods.
Let's talk about that letter to the Justice Department now. You are calling for a second special counsel to investigate the FBI and specifically its use of the Steele dossier to obtain that FISA warrant to spy on Carter Page. Explain for our viewers and listeners why.
Well, there's going to be an investigation. The facts warrant it, whether it is the use of the dossier or whether or not it was vetted, whether or not there was full candor to the tribunal. That fact pattern, I think reasonable minds will tell you, warrants a second look. The question is who conducts that look. I'm a big fan of Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General, a big fan. In fact, I took up for him last week when he was criticized, but there are limits on what the Inspector General can do. The Department of Justice should not be policing itself. I have not called for special counsel, and when other of my colleagues have in the past. But this fact pattern warrants investigation, and when DOJ should not do it and Inspector Horowitz cannot do it, that really leaves no recourse but special counsel.
And why can't the IG do it?
Well, Michael Horowitz does not have jurisdiction over any employees that have left the Department of Justice or the FBI, nor does he have jurisdiction over employees of other agencies like the State Department or private citizens. He doesn't have subpoena power. He doesn't have access to a grand jury. He can't confer immunity on someone in exchange for information. He's a remarkably talented guy, and I think he's a great Inspector General. But if you can't access almost 24 witnesses, I don't know how you'd be asked to do the job.
Couldn't Congress give the IG that subpoena power? Couldn't Congress empower him to conduct?
We're trying. We're trying. Stevie Russell, and it's actually bipartisan on the Oversight Committee, we are trying to give the Inspector General subpoena power so he can compel witnesses that have left the department to come. In the past, that has been stopped by the Senate. But I'm actually working with Inspector General Horowitz right now to try to get that over the finish line. I want him to have every tool he needs, every arrow in the quiver to do the investigation. But right now he does not. And at the pace with which the Senate moves, our grandkids will be having this conversation because I don't think they're going to pass it anytime soon.
Congressman, while I have you here, I do want to ask you about the other news of the day, and that, of course, being a porn star suing the President of the United States. You're chair of the Oversight Committee. Are you at all concerned that you don't just have this adult film star suing the president, but the fact that the president's personal lawyer has admitted that he paid $130,000 shortly before the election, reportedly so she wouldn't talk about that affair? Are you concerned that there might be some sort of campaign finance issue here?
Oh, I don't know. We wouldn't have jurisdiction over campaign finance, correct? I've really tried to keep the Oversight Committee focused on our jurisdiction, and I know that that frustrates some folks in your line of work and, frankly, some folks in my line of work. The census is not nearly as interesting as former porn stars. But I've tried to have hearings that were within our jurisdiction. I'm also on Intel and Judiciary. I don't know what role Congress would have in investigating an alleged private settlement. Maybe Bob Mueller wants to take a look at it, but I don't think you want Congress doing it.
Congressman, as a Republican from a fairly conservative state, does it concern you at all that there is a porn star suing the President of the United States?
It would concern me whether she was a porn star or not. I am from a conservative state, but I don't know that you have to be. It's getting really hard to talk about politics with your kids this day and age. It's hard to tell the difference between the bold and the beautiful in the Washington press briefings. So, yeah, you know, I'm leaving politics, but I'm still going to be a husband and a father and a citizen, and I would love the political discourse to kind of elevate itself across the board.
You sit on the Intelligence Committee as well. Why hasn't that committee compelled Steve Bannon to fully comply with the subpoena just yet?
Yeah, I was pretty tough on Steve Bannon both times and enjoyed it both times. You can't talk to book authors and others and then say you're not going to talk to the people elected by 700,000 of their fellow citizens to ask questions. The White House told him he could only answer 25 questions. That is a decision that the Speaker is going to make. But, Craig, I will say this in defense of Paul Ryan. Just last night, we settled a lawsuit related to Fast and Furious. So regardless of what you think about Fast and Furious, that was 5 or 6 years ago, and we're just now settling the contempt of Congress litigation. Contempt of Congress is not a great way to get the information. I don't want the drama. I don't want a floor vote like we had with Attorney General Holder. I want the information. I'm disappointed that the White House relied upon a privilege that frankly does not exist. Paul and Kevin are going to have to make that call, but I don't want anybody thinking that contempt of Congress means you contemporaneously get the information you're seeking. It means in 5 or 6 years, you may prevail in court.
You mentioned yourself that you're leaving office. What's the plan next?
Go practice law, try to be a good husband, good father, good citizen, go back to our beloved South Carolina. It's been a great 8 years. Craig, I was an okay prosecutor. I haven't been that good in Congress, so I'll go back to a courtroom.
An okay prosecutor. All right, we'll leave it there. Congressman Trey Gowdy from Washington. Congressman, thanks for your time, sir. Come back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.